I apologize because last class, I didn't get a chance to introduce myself. And so I feel like, um, I didn't properly introduce myself. So I'm gonna say some things about me. So for again, I've this is my ninth year teaching at Everett Community College, and I've recently started to teach in the IT department over the last maybe 3 or 4 years. But my background is in teaching math. So I also teach in the math department, and I normally teach statistics. And I've been doing that for probably the last 5 or 6 years, usually online too. But when I first started at ECC about 9 years ago, back in 2015, 2016, between 2015 and 2018, I was pretty much always on campus, but at night. I was like the nighttime guy. I would come in Tuesday, Thursdays, and do like math 141 or 146 or things like that. And then um but my background is in teaching. Like this is my 24th year of teaching. And I also have some experience in industry type experience. Like I created a data science firm, and I also work on different projects. One of the things I'll put is I have currently have three master's degrees, and it sounds kind of prestigious, but one of them was kind of the cybersecurity master's that I got was kind of a sweet deal that because I had already did so much work in the data science. So, but uh, but I ended up getting um, three master's degrees in one in data science, another in cybersecurity, and my third, which was the first one, was in educational leadership from UW. And right now I'm working on my doctorate in education. I can't do like a PhD as much as I would want to and take on that challenge, but all of the PhD programs are always full time, and I have to take care of my bills, my family, and but the doctorate of education is cool enough. Um, I've worked out playing chess. I don't game as much anymore, but I one thing that I am doing a lot more of is riding my motorcycle. And as crazy as it sounds, like I'm kind of like looking for another one too. And the one that I have now is it's nice. I mean, it's a Suzuki Gixxer 750. I'm into the super sport stuff, even though I'm kind of an old man. Um, but I have a lot of different websites and YouTube playlists and things like that. And I wrote papers on. I'm big on trading, especially forex trading and maybe even a little bit of options. I've been doing that for a while, so about 20 years or so is when I got into it. But um, I had some projects on using an AI trading bot to make trades and things like that. And I guess one of the newest projects that I can add to my list is the Ghost Terminal. So the Ghost Terminal is the thing that I've created for our class. So let me get out of here. The thing that I created for our class, and basically it's a Google Cloud project that I have running. And it's costing about 3 or 4 cents a day, which is kind of a lot. Um, but if people are using it, then it's an expense that I'm willing to keep. I mean, when you do the math, it's like, all right, so for one day I won't have lunch or something like that. Yeah. And then it like all breaks even or whatever. But so enough about me. I do want to get into a review of last week, and then we'll have a little lecture and then just a preview of next week's stuff. But I've been trying to grade them as much as I've seen so far, and I like what I'm seeing. Like a lot of you guys are, I've begun to set up your labs. If you don't necessarily have a lab set up, hopefully by this week, you should definitely have something set up that you can just use and work on because we are really going to zero in and focus in on the the command line interface. They call it the CLI. Because there's really two, right? There's the GUI, the GUI, and then there's the CLI. And there's both benefits and kind of advantages, disadvantages of each. We have to know the difference. But because of the title of a Linux admin or Linux systems administration type of course, we are supposed to focus more so on the command line than on the desktop version of Linux. But in reality, the two go hand in hand. So that's kind of what's happening there. And but so what I'll do is first let's just start off with a review of some things that we talked about um, last week. And so let me pull up. Let's just kind of go over some things real quick. All right. So um, the first week again, it was all about setting up your lab, and there's still some more that are coming in that I will definitely catch up on. So week one, setting up your lab again. If you click on that, we're not picky. You can do this however you like, however you want. And if you're not sure, you can just ask somebody a question about it, and I'm sure, either myself or others in the class can kind of put you in the right direction. Um, be sure to check out announcements every once in a while. I may post an announcement, like I posted in the announcements the Zoom recording video of last week, and I will post this week's lecture as an announcement. So once you click on that announcement, you will see the link, and then from there you can get the recording. There was also a resource about setting up the labs. I like Network Chuck. There's something about him that he's got a lot of charisma, and he simplifies things quite a bit as well, but he does go over some pretty powerful things. So there was a resource about that, a video about him setting up his VM stations in different areas, and also in the book, one of our books in the file section has a resource about setting up a lab. Just if you're more of a book person, and like me, I'm very much a book person. Like before, I like reading manuals and things like that, and so that's it's just comforting before you start to fiddle with things. And other people like to just fiddle with things first, and then maybe look at some guidance. But so there is something in there on that. And then again, the Ghost Terminal, which is the new project that's come out that I've produced, you all have access to that. And this guy, we are going to keep this thing running. Um, and so those are some of the resources, and I will sometimes every once in a while just put in the resources, and that's how that'll go for the announcements. But one of the things is looking on the reading. So there was a reading assignment um, that came out, and it was, let me pull up. Basically, it was about chapter one, and um, there was a pre-assessment at the end, but I'm not really gonna I can't really quiz you on those things because those are the kind of things that they were really seeing if you already knew some of the stuff. It wasn't what you should have learned already from chapter one, because the truth is, for diagnostics, we're all supposed to miss them. It would be weird for you to know how to do all the diagnostic problems. I'll just be like, well, you could just challenge this course right now and just be done with it. Um, but there was some good juicy stuff about Linux that you see in almost every Linux book. A little brief history about Linux, um, the bash processing. They even talk a little bit about the kernel. And the kernel, I used to, it was I was an abstract type of thing. And let me put full screen real quick. Um, let's do full screen mode, and let's see if um, the kernel is something that's always kind of talked about in Linux, and um, and it is considered like the core of the operating system, right? It is like the mother brain, and all it really is a gigantic computer program, and that program manages all of the different functions of what's going on inside of Linux, right? So, and it even covers the boot, the startup, the straps, where it's starting up, and so the kernel takes over the machine, and it is nothing more than a computer program, usually written in C, and it's always running, and it carries out the processes and determines which processes will carry out what job so that things can get done. And so at there there's there is kind of a very abstract way of viewing the computer. There is a book in our file section called the root. I think it's just called root, um RUTE, and they talk a little bit about how the ones and zeros can get transferred over the wire, right? Like through the frequency, right? If your high pitch is one, low pitch is zero. And so, you know, different frequencies will come in. They need to be measured. They're measured, and next thing you know, the ones and zeros are, a certain amount of bits, and that represents something inside of the so there's a lot of different ways to view the computer, and it's just a little fascinating. I mean, when you look at a computer, or you build a computer, and you look at the motherboard and all this, I mean, from far away, it looks like some kind of city. Like you have a bird's eye view of some like it's just so complex, so much happening. It's a little overwhelming, but oftentimes when you kind of start to study it more and more, it starts to become a lot more less magical and more just technical. And and there is an art to it all as well. But I do want to get to what we'll do is get to um, some of the questions at the very end, and we'll
Leave
be go
Sunday.
yeah,
But
and
he said he still wants me there by Monday, though.
Just leave Sunday.
He said this week.
and what we'll do, we will go over some of these basic commands, and so it's good that if you were able to read this, it's really good stuff. And then these questions, again, these are just pre-assessment questions. Um, let's go over the first five right now, and then we will move on to the main lecture for tonight. So let's kind of go over the first five questions real quick. So, um, and maybe I'll ask the question to somebody. If somebody happens to know the answer, you can just unmute yourself if you want to take this one. And if you have notes on this or you have any information on this one, you can discuss it. But so the first question is, which bash, and remember that bash is an acronym, and it does stand for shell, right? Sometimes they call it the born again shell. But bash is Linux, and so it's the command line in particular, which bash configuration files are used for non-login bash shell sessions. Okay. And then they said choose two. So which configuration files are used for non-login bash shell sessions?
I got this one.
Yes, please.
It's the B, etc. bash source and dot bash source C
Nice.
or bash RC.
Professor Thomas, I had a question. Do we also like send our answers privately?
To this?
or
No,
do we just turn by turn and answer?
yeah, no, it's just if you feel like answering, you can, but no, I'm not collecting this. This was just part of the reading, and it was kind of a lot to read. But I'm just kind of going over some things about reading, but we're all going to get full credit for this assignment. This assignment's worth 5 points. We'll give out the 5 points for every student in the class will get the 5 points for this assignment.
And is
Um,
this
yeah.
is this what's considered the pop quiz from the reading material?
Yeah. It's been minimized now to just kind of a talk. I kind of chickened out. It's not going to be a pop quiz. Like even if you didn't read it, you're okay, man. As long as you're here, and you can also make it up as well, right? You can also make up reading, right? But I understand this class, there are people that are doing multiple things. It's not just this class, and so I understand that. In fact, that's another thing I was going to mention about me. Some of my work experience where I was currently doing a job as an AI trainer, and I have a referral link. It was interesting, and there I'm kind of out of it now, but while I was in it, it was kind of convenient because it was a 24-hour, 7-day a week job that was always running. So whenever you felt like making money, you could log on for, you know, X number of hours or minutes and do something. And then you see yourself earning money as well. And what you're doing is you're training the AI because they're building a new AI system. And what you're doing is training it and you're evaluating their responses. You're trying to determine which response you like better and why, and things like that. And then you write it all up and submit it, and you just do more and more and more. And I said all that to say is, as you get exposed to these responses, you start to learn more aspects of just the entire tech field based on the responses and things that um, the responses that some of the questions that people were asking or that was being asked, I never even thought of. But then to see the solutions and then pick apart the solutions and then test some of the code that you had to figure out how to test the code and actually rate, so it's a matter of they have the code, I just have to run it and make sure I got a real answer. It was that kind of thing. And so there's jobs like that, and then there's some other things that I'm sure we'll talk about when the time comes. um but for right now, we're going to move on to number 2. And the next question, and by the way, yes, it was good. The bash rc file, which is in the um etc folder, is here, and then it's also in the home directory. And that dot, when you see the little dot symbol, that means it's a hidden file. It won't show up in the directory. It's hidden. But there are ways that you can list out all of the files and including the hidden files as well. And we're gonna talk about that. It's with the ls, but you also have to add that tick a. And when you use the A, that's going to list out all of the files, including the hidden ones as well. And most people will probably have .bash rc in their home directory. And if you go inside, since as a root user, you should be able to access every single file because you're the god of the machine, you'll see that it's tracking what you're typing in usually. And it may be doing other things as well, right? So number 2, it says, which of the following commands can be used to schedule a job to run at 4 p.m.? And choose 2. Which of the following commands can be used to schedule a job to run at 4 p.m.? And sometimes we call these cron jobs when you have to, like, let's say you want the machine to run this code at exactly 4 p.m. every day, it will do that for you as long as the machine is on. If the machine stays on and the machine is always on, which basically just means it's now a server, because that's really what a server is. It's the dedicated machine that's always on. Um, but it's important to be able to schedule it to do certain things at certain times, and there are ways to do that. And we got A and E. We can type at 4 p.m. and then at, you would do 4:00 dot clock. Or at, I'm thinking A and D, but I'm hearing A and C now. C, 1600 hours is 4 p.m. But would you write just 16? Definitely A is correct. There's another one. And anybody? It's actually D. 1600 hours is considered tea time. I don't, I actually, I'm not too familiar with that, but it's apparently it's a thing. Noon plus 4. How do we know that it's not adding minutes versus adding hours or 16, you know? And 4 o'clock could also represent 4 a.m. So we got to watch out for that. Yeah, yeah. Let's look at number 3. So it says you've opened the var op my app /settings.txt file in the VI editor. You need to enter new text into the file. Which key will switch a user into insert mode from normal or command mode? We have any Vim users? And this would definitely be I. And we'll talk about Vim. Vim is all about the next chapter as well, but I'm not going to assign that as reading. It's just too much to invest in that one text editor, and there are several other text editors. Vim is considered expert, advanced level, and it could be extremely frustrating, but highly rewarding if you're using it a lot and you start to learn all the shortcuts. But there are so many others that are just as good, like Nano, where Nano you can actually, control, paste, and cut and copy, and it's more user friendly. Um, but Vim is actually the one that we'll probably talk about more, because I'm a big advocate for Vim, and and we'll talk about it, but we won't have to do the reading or anything like that. So number 4, the YAML files that are used to configure network cards to use DHCP are set up static IP addressing, can be found where? Anybody? This one is actually going to be D. Yep. Yeah. The others just don't really make much sense. But the net plan is the one. And so that's where those files are. All right. Let's do this last question. To create a new directory in a user's home directory named My Files, which command would you use? So the correct answer here is B. Now that little tilde is going to put you in the user's directory. So where it says make directory, the mkdir is the make directory, which is basically you can think of as a folder. And then the tilde is going to put you in the home directory, and then slash my files. And notice that in Linux, files and folders, directories are case sensitive. So my files with a capital M and capital F will be different from lowercase my files. Those would be two different folders. Like if you put this command onto Linux, it won't duplicate. You'll have two separate folders, and they treat these as different characters. Okay. And so A will work, B rather is the correct solution here. All right. So now we're going to move on though. We're going to get into our lecture, and then we'll kind of wrap it up after that. Let me pull up my questions here. 1 second. Yeah, here we go. And what I'll do is, and I'll put these files in our Canvas classroom. All right. So just gonna go through this real quick. So the main objectives here is really just understanding the characteristics of Linux and the basic interactions. By now, we are going to start to enter commands into this terminal. So we're going to start off at the very basic, simplistic level. One thing about Linux and the characteristics is that it is considered a free and open source software, which means it's available for free, and the source code can be modified and redistributed. Okay. And so that's kind of what makes it interesting. Let's see, characteristics of free and open source. Obviously, you see here we have open source license allow you to duplicate, modify, re-release. You can share. And then the open source license examples is the GNU project, Apache license, Mozilla, and there's many others. There's the Berkeley, there's the MIT one, many more. The Unix is an old but commonly used OS, and Unix versions are called flavors. So there are different flavors, like you saw, like Kali Linux is a different flavor. Parrot is another flavor. Unix is considered closed source, and then Linux is licensed as open source by the GPL. And then Windows and Mac OS are considered closed sources, right? So we just don't have access to modify the source code for Windows or Mac. And if you tried it, you would be breaking the law. So they're pretty strict about that. Here's some more information. We have the history and the philosophy of the Unix and the Linux systems here. This is what's happening. Let's get into that. Some traits of Linux. Understanding the Linux distributions. And then as you can see, it's been branching off in different areas. In the 90s, it's kind of a pivotal moment where the Linux was released and then it split the Debian and then the Red Hat. And then from Debian, Ubuntu came out and all of this stuff. Pretty interesting stuff. Here are some common distributions and common server deployments, right? Usually the web server is one of the main use cases for a Linux machine. All right, so we're going to get into some commands now. And so we have to kind of first understand that there's the graphical versus the command line interface. There's two different ones. And again, there are positive and negatives of each case. Here are some of the command line interfaces advantages. Quicker to perform tasks. Obviously, you have to know the task that what you're completing though, right? It's quicker when you know the commands. Performance due to consuming fewer resources, and then scripting allows complex commands to be combined and automated and also scheduled. And then the disadvantages is there's a learning curve. Yeah, that's what we're alluding to. It's intimidating, right? I know a lot of you, when we talked about downloading our lab, some of us was like, well, I don't just want the command line. I want the desktop too. So you went even one step further and downloaded that. And the truth is like, we don't even need the desktop. And if you think about it, it's only really there for comfort. We're really going to be operating and kind of manipulating the computer based on the commands that we enter inside the terminal. And in theory, we should be able to do everything to the computer that we could do with the desktop with a mouse and Windows with what we could do inside of the command line. So we have to always keep that in the back of our heads or have faith in that and realize that, hey, I can accomplish this. I just need to know how. And there's probably even an easier and elegant way for me and a very simple and simplistic way of doing something inside of the shell. And it's true. I mean, when I think like that, I challenge myself. I almost always tend to find some kind of solution to how to do it. All right. And also here are some more disadvantages here. Non-intuitive due to obscure commands because it's old, inconsistent command structures. Let's look at some common Linux CLIs and GUIs. So the common CLIs are Bash, Corn Shell, and the Z shell. Common GUIs, the GNOME, KDE Plasma. Now, my parent operating system was using the KDE Plasma graphical user interface, which basically looks like Windows machine. You know, my application window was on the bottom left side. At the top, I had settings. That's kind of what you would see when you use a Windows machine. But and also for my Windows, I think under the KDE, when I pull up an application, to exit out is on the right side, which is common for Windows machines. But for when you're just running straight up Linux under the GNOME, I think to exit out of the Windows is on the left side. It's so annoying, especially when you're a Windows user. To transfer over to it, and when it's off the offside, it's just it can throw you off quite a bit. Some of these I'm just not familiar with, but there's quite a lot that you can explore and kind of customize and get the computer to the way you want it and unique to you. You just have so much more power to customize, and and get it as fast as you want and modify it how you want. I mean, I don't know. It could be the more you learn about it, I think the more you realize that you can have more ownership over it. All right. Here are some review activity. Compare the advantages and disadvantages of the GUI and CLI. Explain the differences. So what I'll do now is I'm going to enter in a few commands. So I am going to pull up my Ubuntu lab here. Let me clear this. And I'll just start to enter in a few basic commands just so that we can get a sense of what's happening. Now, usually the first command I do is who am I? And that will return the user, what user you are. Now, this command is very helpful when you don't see, you just have the command prompt only and you don't even see the username and the computer. Then when you type who am I, then it'll let you know which user you are. Usually you want to see root. Also, if I type the host name, that would bring up the computer name that I'm using, dstack404, right? Another basic common command is pwd, the present working directory. So the directory that I'm in right now, and that lets me know I'm in the users folder. And it's inside of the home directory. And notice the first slash. That means that's the root directory from the highest level up. So the home directory is at the root directory. And then inside of that is my own folder, the dthomas folder. And so from inside of here, I can create documents and they'll all be inside of my folder. So right now, what I'll do is list out everything that's in the folder because I don't know what's in the folder yet. There probably will be a lot of things just because I use this for different things. Okay, I've cleaned it up quite a bit. I'm going to remove high text. So I don't even have that anymore. And let's do a ls again. There it is. Whoa, okay, let's zoom out. These are all of the folders. These are folders, and I believe these are executables and folders, directories. I don't have any files. Well, I mean inside, recursively, but right now we have the ls, but are there any hidden files? Well, in order to figure that out, I can do ls-a, and this means list them all, everything. And there are quite a bit of hidden files. Okay. I see the .bash rc file, and we know that is a configuration file. We could modify that file, and it would do certain things while we're away or when the machine is on, but we haven't logged in. It can carry out some things for us and customize our entire kind of our operating system. Now, there are other commands as well, like we could do list all in the long format. And so now we have all of the files, including all the hidden files and all of the other files that we have here. And as you can see, and we'll be learning how to read this. It tells you when the file's created, how much memory it takes, how many bytes, the users who have access to it, who created it. And then also the first code lets you know that it is a directory. And then the first user has rewrite executable. And then the group has whatever group it belongs to. It has the read. It can't write it, but it can execute it. and so on and so forth. This is like split into three. And the first one is the directory, and then we're split into three. The first user, the group of the user, and then there's another one. So we'll talk more about that as that comes up, probably by next week or so. But that's kind of a basic command. I'm going to clear the screen. It's pretty busy. And what I'm going to do now is create a file. So I'll use Nano, and I'm going to create a file called hi text. And this is the Nano operating system. I can type in stuff, hello world. This is, and now I'm going to do Control X. Okay, let's make this bigger. Control X, I can hit Y and then enter. And now I have that file, hi.txt. And there's another command called cat. It's pretty easy to remember. Cat allows you to print whatever's in that file onto your screen. That's exactly what it did. So that's pretty cool. Now I'm going to make a directory. I'm going to call it, let's call it Ghost, a Ghost folder. So now we have a new folder called Ghost somewhere, and let's move hi text into Ghost. So we're going to do move hi.txt into Ghost. All right. So I didn't have permission to actually move that file, but now I had to switch to the sudo command, and I had to put in the password for dthomas, and that gave me the right to move the file. So now the file has been gone. If I go into the directory of Ghost, so I have to do a cd command, which stands for change directory. When I do change directory Ghost, I'm now in the Ghost directory. I can list the files out in Ghost. Let's list them all out. And wait, wait a minute. I don't have it. Did we move it? Or did I delete it? Let's do that one more time. Let's do an echo. Let's cat hi text. Okay. So he's there now, but let's see if we could. Move hi text. And this is what we'll do. We'll move it to. I'm gonna move it up one level. So we'll move it out of the Ghost, and hopefully it will be back in our home directory. So there's hi text. So if I move it back again, move hi text back to Ghost. Let's see if we can do that. It did it, no problem. Okay. And this is because Ghost is a directory and we're already in the folder where it is. So it didn't give us any problems. And so now we don't see it. If I change directories into Ghost and list the files, I see it. I can cat that file, and there it is. Okay. So these are just some basic commands. I'll do one other command, and this time I'll do, let's see. I'm gonna do a Python command. Let me see if this will work this time. Print. Let's see. Times I. And then we're gonna pipe this command. Let's store this into, we'll call it tree.py, and then we're gonna have it run that code. Let's see here. Okay, I have to escape it out, don't I? 1 second. Wait a minute. I So I'm gonna do this loop. It's a for loop for I in the range from 0 to 10. And then I need a new line and a tab. And then print $.I, store in tree.py. Oh, I know the problem. Every time I've issued the command, it's added this to tree.py. And that could be a problem when I go to run the file. So what I'll do is, let's redo this, and we need to escape this though. So it's literally printing /in, and this is a special character. 1 second, let's see. Wait, what's wrong with my, is it the other way? Let me check. Hmm. I may have to, wait, yeah, we may have to come back to this. I'm not understanding what's, this is one of my little test codes I always usually run. Let's clear this out. I mean, I guess we could just go into VI and then just do tree.py and go into insert mode. Let's delete this. I'll do, let's just actually just execute the code real fast. I'll do for I in range print we'll do $sign and then times I. And that's it. And then go to write quit, cat it. Let's just make sure it's there. And now we're going to run the script. And so what we have is a nice little triangle that has a lot of $signs and things like this. But For some reason though, let's just go back to this for a second. Now, if we go to echo and go to the help command, actually, I have to escape that out. Second. Wait a minute. What? All right. So it's just well that um okay, I'll just do it another way. So when we look up the echo command, basically it's a very simple thing. What it says it does. It just says echo display a line of text. But there are other options. So there's the echo with a short option, and then you can add a string or echo with a long option. And so some of the options here, it'll tell you what to do. So echo the new string to standard output. So dash in, that does not output the trailing new line. Dash E enables interpretation of a backslash escape. I was doing a forward slash, but I should have did a backslash as my escape. I think that was it. Let's double check that. So, because even when I did man, echo, so whenever you type echo and you say echo hello, it's going to repeat that. Same thing here if we have quotes. And you can also redirect this into a new file. Call it hello. That's the file name. And I've just created a file and I stuck hello inside of it. So echo's pretty powerful, but what about when we needed to go to help or something? It's going to just do echo dash help is what's going to print. But I want that, I don't want it to repeat help. I want it to literally give help. And so I'm going to try this. And let's make sure the escape character is not, it's not escaping it out. Let's go back to the map page really fast. So yeah, it's supposed to be / help, display the help and exit. Hmm, 1 second here. This is really weird. What about, am I, all right, yeah, I may have to come back to that, but from what I understand, and let's go back to this other one real quick. Let's call this triangle dot py, and we'll call this one triangle dot py as well. Oh, okay, yeah, it's just not gonna pick it up. It's not reading it properly, so I'll have to come back to that. Yeah. I'm surprised it's not able to pick it up properly, but it just isn't. And I shouldn't spend much more time on this, so I will exit this out. So that was a few commands, and we'll get back into it as well next week, but let's clear this out. Yeah, those were some of the most basic commands that I want to go over today. Let's see, did I miss any other command that would have been good to go over? We talked about cat. We talked a little bit about Vim, VI. Yeah, and exiting. So you'll get an opportunity to do that. And before we leave, let's take a look at next week's assignments. All right. So again, one way to find the assignments is just click on here, week 2, or go to the calendar. So one of the assignments is to watch this YouTube video and then answer some questions about it. So this is actually a discussion, and the YouTube video is pretty straightforward. And here are some of the questions. This will be graded. Let's see what else we have. And we have 2 more labs. They're very different, but they're shorter. Entering in shell commands. So it's kind of like what I just did. We're going to be entering in different commands. This is something that you could have done today, just now. It's pretty straightforward. You would use the snipping tool, which is this guy. This is what it looks like. Click new, snip what you need to snip, and you can even do a Control C. Control C will copy the picture. This is now a picture, and I can now paste this somewhere. If I have a new document, this is one of the easiest, fastest ways. I could just drop that in there. Now I have a picture. And so you want to be able to take pictures of certain things right away. The snipping tool in Windows is really awesome. It's so important. It's on my taskbar. All right, it's used a lot. And then most of you guys understand that the next assignment, I think, is a little smaller or even shorter than that, but it is trickier. So let's get into that real quick. So for week 2, there's lab 2, the super user privileges. So it kind of talks about the difference between sudo and su, switch user. So switch user and then the sudo command. And what's interesting is it's kind of a hack. It's a hack. If you don't know the root password, you could still switch to root with the sudo command. But the su command will switch you to root, but you have to know the root password. And so they talk a little bit about this here. All right. You don't have to do this word for word. If you have other usernames or if your system is different, use yours. But for the most part, you just follow along with the steps until you can. And then you improvise when you cannot. As simple as that. You'll get the full credit documented. And then the week after next, it kind of ramps up. It looks pretty scary. In week 3, there's a lot of labs, but the truth is, these labs are shorter. They're not all that long. It could have been 2 big labs, but it's been broken apart. And there's also reading for chapter 4 out of the same book that we read in chapter 1. All right, I'm going to end the recording from here, and we're going to start to pack up.